On this ITAV, Amazon Alexa is headed for your boardroom. What that means for your security. Speaking of security, we'll also talk about NHS's decision to allow patient data in the cloud. All that and more next on ITAV.
The network for the AV industry.
What are you listening to?
This
is AV.
This
is AVNation.
This is AVNation.
This is ITAV, episode 14, recorded Friday, January 26, 2018. A kettle of data.
Support for AVNation is brought to you by SDVOE, the platform for networked AV, and by Daylight, the leading producer of high-quality projection screens worldwide.
This is ITAV, the AVNation program looking at both the IT industry and how it intersects with the AV industry. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. With us to talk about all the stories that we've got for this month, first and foremost, Mr. Derek Jonkus from Extron Electronics. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great.
Also with us, the webmaster extraordinaire and digital janitor of AVNation, Mr. Bradford Ben.
Great to see you again, Tim. It feels like I haven't seen you in forever.
I know. Bradford and I get to hang out in Chicago every once in a while. So, also with us, my buddy and pal, Mr. Michael Drainer, IT and AV professional. How are you, sir?
Doing very well. Thanks for having me. I'm just glad that we have a janitor to clean up all of your digital mess.
Yeah,
it's job security.
It's a full-time job.
Yeah. Okay. Enough of that. Let's kick this off by talking about something that on the surface may seem inherently residential, but it's not. Amazon announced in January the program called Alexa for Business. And what it is it's a blog post. We'll put a link to the website where Amazon is not only touting, but laying out the program for Alexa to be in your corporate offices. There was a significant conversation on the Twitters between a bunch of AV professionals, some of which were not too thrilled with the idea, some of which said, absolutely, this makes complete sense. I will point out that in CEDIA 2016, I wrote a couple pieces where I basically told the commercial AV industry that you better be ready, because if you don't have a board chairman asking where Alexa is in the next year, I'll give you $100. I'll still give you the $100, but Alexa just made it a lot easier for me to keep my money. If you look at this, though, and some of the companies I want to read off on you here, because the companies that are already employing this, to me, are staggering. WeWork, and then Mitsui & Company, and then Capital One. Not exactly a company that is unconcerned with security, which is one of the biggest pushbacks from the AV industry. So, Bradford, I'm going to start with you on this. What are the concerns that we in the AV industry and the IT industry are going to have with this voice control coming onto the network?
So I'll be the first to say I'm one of the people against it because of security, because you're basically putting listening devices in every room that are very, very common. So it's easy to picture an exploit being built for them. Also, I want to point out that they actually released Alexa for Business in November of 2017. They did the first pushes for it, and then the big push at CES. But to me, the biggest problem is still some of the basics. And I've read some of the papers about voice printing and being able to track who's talking and all of those things. Is how does it know who is in control of the meeting? Who's important? Who do they listen to? If you look at this podcast right here, there are 4 of us. How do we know who's important? Oh, it's me. But how do we know who's important if we're just a voice control system? The other thing I want to point out is that you have to train it to understand your rooms and your business processes and all of that, just like you would have to do with Watson of give it a knowledge domain. And the one that I thought was really interesting and really starting to blur the lines is it allows you to link your personal Alexa account with your business account, so that when you say call mom at home, it calls your mother. When you say call mom at the office, it would call your mother as well. So I think it's interesting of what it's going to do, and the fact that it's open hooks is nice because it does have an API or an automated programming interface, so you can easily tie it into something that's Python-based or Lua-based for scripting. But I still think it's not going to be the panacea that a lot of people think it's going to be. I think it needs probably 2 years to 3 years before it's viable. The fact that Capital One uses it, to be honest, I'm very scared of now. I think I'm going to go cancel my Capital One cards. You know, I'm working on projects where they're like, yeah, don't bring your cell phone into the room.
Yeah.
Right.
All right, Derek. Bradford mentioned Python and languages. Extron, correct me if I'm wrong, is a control company that has not yet announced integration with Alexa. I'm not going to ask you to let me under the hood and announce anything you're not ready to. But does this announcement and its integration into business, as seemingly seamless as it looks like it is, does it help you guys get down that road if you have any interest in that at all?
Oh, first, we have an interest. We've been working on a lot of these voice assistant technologies from Google, Amazon, and Microsoft for quite some time. So, in fact, we have customers that are already implemented their own Alexa skills with Extron control systems. In fact, I don't think it would be a shock because it's sort of on YouTube and on LinkedIn. There's a gentleman by the name of Robert Kennedy at the University of Scranton who's automated his whole campus using Alexa and developing his own skill for the University of Scranton. They interface with Extron control systems. So to Bradford's point about certain languages making it very extensible and very easy, you can do these things right now in terms of just being able to deploy them. As far as an Extron focused solution, I think we're waiting to see how some of these things actually shake out. The technology is certainly pretty interesting. The items that Bradford mentioned are certainly all true. And what I'm interested to know is, does this technology help companies, customers, put more technology into spaces where those spaces would never have been kind of programmed or designed to be able to have some level of automation or some level of capability? There seems to be a lot more, smaller rooms that are, I would say, are more contrite and more concise in terms of what their technology mix is. Kind of wondering if the Amazon style services, voice services, would allow additional capabilities to be added into rooms, that without really changing their product footprint.
Actually, I think that's a great point, Derek. It's I do think that'll help because when technology is easier to use, look at the Apple iPod. It displaced MP3 players because it was easier to use.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually. That's a really good point. Yep.
Yeah. Technology that's easier to use, people will use and deploy.
Yep, absolutely. All right, Michael, as you're talking with your clients, I'll make you the same bet. You're gonna hear this as well with your clients. How do you best deploy this as securely as possible, I guess?
So we're in the Midwest, and one thing about the Midwest is we're a little bit slower to adopt edging technologies, which is good because it lets the East and West Coast kind of work out the bugs and the details and figure out what's secure and what's not. So in my conversations, what I'm finding is people overwhelmingly don't want it. They're like, just give me a button to push. I don't need voice control. I don't need that added capability. And, the government's listening in on us through this thing. There's a lot of skepticism when it comes to these things, alluding to the security issues that Bradford mentioned a few moments ago. Yeah. So it's something that from a strictly technological standpoint, I'm excited about, right? As a nerd, as a geek, I love this stuff. I love the ability to bring this into a small environment to make it easy for people to utilize technology that we're putting in. But at the same time, there are a lot of issues surrounding this in sensitive environments, and how to deal with that, only time's going to tell, because all of this information goes to the Amazon cloud for processing. It all goes out there for recognition, and then it comes back. It doesn't stay within the ecosystem. So I think in certain situations, it's a huge asset. In other situations,
All right, very good. Next story we're going to talk about is it's not necessarily in the U.S., but it may have ramifications here if it gets here. But for our listeners who are in the UK, the NHS, which is the National Hospital System, okays hospitals and doctors storing patient data on public cloud servers. Now, Bradford, start with you on this. This is what there are rules and laws in the U.S. called HIPAA. And Bradford, I'm going to break your rule. I don't know all of the acronyms for HIPAA, but it protects patient data. In other words, the hospitals have to know where that data is. It has to be secure, and they can't let anybody else see it except for authorized people, so your doctor and people of that nature. Is this a security risk to put patient data on cloud servers?
You're going to probably drop your jaw when I say this, but no.
Okay, why?
Here's the reason why. It's very similar to something I've been saying when digital audio transports came along. You can hire an IT expert to take care of this for you, so you don't have to know everything about configuring switches. At a hospital, you can now outsource to a company such as Amazon or Google or these other companies that they spend a lot more effort and time on security than most people do. So that, yes, you're renting another computer, but now it's becoming as a service and you're getting that technical expertise. So you don't have to find a local IT guy that hopefully understands 256-bit encryption and the difference between end-to-end encryption and encrypted transport. And for those who are curious, end-to-end means that your data is encrypted the entire time. Encrypted transport means it's encrypted to the server, then the server can read it. Welcome to Gmail. So I think it's a good thing. I think it allows for better communication between hospitals because it's on a cloud. So if you go from one hospital to another hospital or one doctor to another doctor, your health records follow you. The other thing, like I said, is it brings the experts in. Here in Indiana, there was a malware $50,000 ransom against a hospital. And odds are it's because the IT department was overwhelmed. They paid it, got the system back, etc. Here, because it's cloud-based and you have experts who can deal with this, I think that risk is going to go down a whole bunch. Now, there's still other risks of like the IV drip machine that can be hit by Spectre or have, IoT bot firmware put on it and all those types of things. But I think putting the records up there is actually really smart and good, and I think it's going to be an overall win. I do agree that you have to worry about the laws of HIPAA, Health Insurance, Personal Privacy Act, as well as, data retention and all those things. But, I know this sounds bad. I go to my dentist's office and all the records are there in paper and anyone can go look at them. This actually gives you better security because, you have to log in. You can put in two-factor authentication. You can make it, you can only log in from certain computers. So I think it's a move in the right direction. I think it's being managed well after reading the article of the whole idea of, look, we're doing it this way and here's the people who need to do this. I think it's actually a good move, and I think it's something that we should look at, more. I know that when I've been janitoring AVNation, I've done specifically that and taken stuff off of Tim's hard drive. It's now residing in the cloud and it's encrypted.
Yeah, I still don't know why our show intros are encrypted. I don't get that.
So I'm going to bring a little surprise to you here, Tim, on this one. The data's already out there. This is nothing new. It's already happening. This is coming to light simply because the NHS is making this a public statement that, yes, we're endorsing this. But I can tell you, we work with various doctors and chiropractors and dentists in our region that are already using cloud-based EHR or electronic health record systems. They're moving off-premise for exactly those reasons that Bradford mentioned, right? It's greater security, it's easier access, it allows the doctor to work from wherever they are to share information between colleagues that might be covering for them in another office for referrals. There's all kinds of reasons that this is a good thing. And I can tell you, as one who's had to set up local infrastructure to support a healthcare facility, it is a behemoth undertaking. right? You have to be very well versed in HIPAA regulations to understand what the implications are to you, the service provider, not just to the healthcare professional. Because as a provider, we're on the hook to make sure that this stuff is secure. And quite frankly, I love the idea that I could take that risk and I could push it off on somebody else who, quite frankly, has more resources than I can afford to pay in my organization.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Derek, as you were consulting with integrators, last year about this time, I was a part of a PSNI's summit, and they had a young lady on there by the name of Teresa Payton, and she's a security expert. She was actually the first CIO of the White House under President George Bush. She made the comment that if you are handling your client's data, then you are in some way, shape, or form liable, right? You are legally exposed. How do we? I mean, is this a way around that, or is this just another tool, like Michael said, to push that security aspect off on somebody else?
I think, I don't know if you're in the insurance business or in the liability and risk prevention kind of, you want to be risk averse. Yeah, you would definitely want to subrogate some of that liability to somebody else. But I also, to complement what both Michael and Bradford both said, there's some lessons here for our industry to really think about, because we've been collecting data from all the little places that we go on the desktop computers for such a long time. And where does all that information go? Mm-hmm. Right. So then we've seen and we've talked about on this show, I know, Tim, you especially have kind of been beating the drum about, look at all these other people that have had these, their information or their content exposed in some way because of, not doing a good job at managing risk. And I think that's a big challenge. And we talk about, just learning networking and learning how networking devices, are supposed to run and operate it as an AV person. Well, just think about the complexities of managing all the data you may have for one big client. And that client eventually, I would imagine, probably going to be very interested in what you're doing with that data. Where does it go? Who gets to store it? Especially if you have things like floor plans and, reflected ceiling plans and wall elevations and infrastructure drawings and IP addresses and things that are documented places. Now, there's some trickle down to our industry that I can't say everyone's going to be as culpable, but as some of the owners of those facilities. But it calls into question a lot of things, because on one side, I think consolidating information and ending up with a good process of storing it, probably very good. On the other hand, it's just a lot more data that's out here. So I think it's like recording video content on your DVR. When's the last time you ever watched everything on your DVR, for example, right? I'm sure there's talk about information sprawl. If it's anything like ours here, I would imagine that the same thing happens for our integrators and everything else. You end up with a lot of data. It's not really categorized well, and it's pretty hard to find. The one thing I could say about health records, it's been a long time since someone said they haven't been able to find a health record for anybody I know. So I'll take that as a positive. But I think this is the world we live in. Data is a lot more ubiquitous, right?
I will say I do think that also having it all in the cloud with some guidance becomes interesting. If you've been following the flu outbreaks here in the States, the Center for Disease Control in Atlanta is relying on data from the thermometer manufacturers that are IoT, because you can track where the hot pockets are, pun intended, of people with fevers. And that's providing more reliable data than the CDC can get elsewhere. So I can easily see someone doing something smart and mining this metadata to do things like figure out, Bob was here and Bill was here, and there's some comparison and interlocking that wouldn't be possible without all this data. But it has to be integrated well. It has to be thought about and secure. But the fact that the thermometers were figuring out the outbreak before the CDC, that kind of made me go, this is the power of IoT that we have to be careful about also.
But that's the paradox. That right there is the issue. And Derek, you really made that point well, is that, yes, we got all this data out there and all this information, but yet it's so useful, like Bradford's saying, but we've got all this risk that we're holding on to, but, it's doing all this good, but, now we've got all this use information, and now we got the floor plans in. We know how they use the space. We know when they use it. We know who's in the room. We know that they're in there every Tuesday at 10 a.m. and they're with these
and
people.
everybody's out of the building by 10.
And that's exactly right. And so it is this paradox of, oh my gosh, this makes life so much better. We can track the flu. We can help solve the world's problems, but at the same time, we're putting ourselves at tremendous risk. How do we balance this?
Well, it's the paradox of personal freedoms and security and privacy versus a greater good, right? Bradford mentioned the CDC and being able to create hotspots. What if I don't want the CDC to know what my temperature is, right?
It's called analog.
Turn around.
I'm not
no,
trying,
that one's probably IoT as well.
I'm not trying to be a wiseacre, but the people laugh at me that I still take notes in the analog domain. You saw it last time we met. I'm taking notes on paper and pen and using a whiteboard. For those who are very privacy aware, I'll even say I'm very privacy aware, there are ways to avoid it, but it takes effort. And people are willing to take convenience over security and privacy.
But for talking about the notes thing there, I do the same thing, but not because it's more secure or because of privacy issues. I do it because it's easier. It's faster. Why do it in the digital domain if it doesn't have to be done there, right? Do it the easy way. And for me, that just works better. But no, I agree. I digress. Yeah.
I agree with that, but it was an easier point to make.
Yeah, right. And it's like this is the big, the great data wrestling match, right? Kind of have all these opposing forces kind of coming at one another here, and man, I can't imagine if I know your audience here, Tim, is a pretty informed audience, but just think a little bit outside our audience for those folks that are looking for folks like us or people like us in the industry to give advice on things like this. It's such a complex topic. And unfortunately, sometimes these things get bounded by legal decisions. Legal precedent sometimes will govern or force this one side or the other to determine what everyone's level of acceptance or tolerance might be for one solution or another. And unfortunately, sometimes those get born out of a bad experience.
Well, and I would also put
how this works in Europe in particular with their data protection requirements. The right to let my information die and how that all works. That's a whole other thing. That's a kettle of fish all by itself.
And I will say this is a big discussion. Tim was saying, what happens if I don't want someone knowing my temperature? Tim and I have this debate probably once a month, once a quarter, as we talk about AVNation metadata. And I'm very much of, if we have no business reason to ask for it, let's not ask for it. And Tim agrees, but then we need to tell our underwriters what our demographics are and who's listening and how many listens, and we wrestle over this a whole bunch. So there is really no easy answer to this in every aspect of the world, not just, the temperature issue and the smart things. It comes down to something that's wide-ranging.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys, that's going to do it for us. Thank you all three so much for joining us. Mr. Michael Drainer, how do people find you?
At Michael Drainer on Twitter and drainertechnologies.com.
All right, Mr. Derek Jonkus, how do people find you and or Extron?
Extron.com, and you can reach me at djonkus@extron.com.
All right, last but not least, the indispensable industry icon, Mr. Bradford Ben. How do people find you?
You can find me cleaning up Tim's messes at avnation.tv. You also can find me on the Twitters at Bradford Ben. You can find me at bradfordben.com, bradfordben.rocks, bradfordben.fun, bradfordben.ninja, etc. You can usually find me making fun of Tim's blues on the Twitter, but right now they're ahead of my devil, so I have to play nice.
I thought it's hard to find ninjas.
Oh no, Brad, you can get .ninja.
Yeah,
you should get .ninja, Derek. You're a ninja.
Yeah,
no, ninja. In fact, it looks like you might have some ninjas on the shelf back there. We got to probably do a whole show.
Bradford's little bobbleheads. Do you have a ninja back there?
I can neither confirm nor deny that I have a ninja back there.
All right. That's good enough for me. All right. My name is Tim Albright, Bradford Dright. Don't follow me on the Twitters, but go by the website, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. While you're there, check out our underwriter section. These are the folks who help us financially and help us bring you this program, AV Week, Resi Week, and all the other stuff we do. Extron is one of those, so we thank them for their support. Also, check out our 2 weekly shows. We have one that covers the commercial side of AV called AV Week, and one that covers the residential side called Resi Week. That happens, Resi Week post every Wednesday, and AV Week post every Monday. So all that and more at the website, AVNation.tv, AVNation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. That's all the time we have for ITAV.